Okay, folks, we'll get the proceedings started. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're grateful that you're here. Looks like we've got just about 100 participants logged in so far, so we'll get started. Um, Again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Mark Szabo. I'm the Vice President of Insights and Engagement at Anstis, and I'm going to be your moderator for the evening. Anstis has been retained by Slokker Homes to help facilitate the community engagement and dialogue around Lakeside. So please note that Slokker Homes is hosting these sessions, and they're being held before the official City of Chestermere application process. The purpose of these sessions tonight and the one on Tuesday is to do a couple of things. One is we want to acknowledge that this is a difficult topic for the community as a whole, and some folks more than others. We want to acknowledge that the topic probably could have been broached better within the community, and the way folks have been getting information has probably been more disruptive than it could have been. Third of all, we want to create some new lines of communication and give everyone a voice to get the thoughts and ideas and concerns from the community directly before that formal process kicks off. Fourth of all, we want to provide some thought starters for how the community might want to reimagine this space. Fifth, we want to tell you what we've heard from door knocking, a brief survey, and some comments on Lakeside Future and social media. And hopefully when the formal process gets underway, we'll be able to all gather together in real life. But for now, we're going to have to make the best of the technology that we have available to us. We had some frustrations with the Microsoft platform that we used Tuesday, so we changed over to Zoom tonight, obviously, and thank you so much for making that adjustment with us. It's a way better experience already. We also heard that folks wanted to speak their questions instead of just type them into the chat. So we'll be opening the floor to all the attendees for a question time tonight. Now, please note that on Tuesday we had about 200 questions in the chat, so it was obviously impossible to get to everyone's questions. Tonight might be a similar story, but what we'll do, like we said on Tuesday, we're going to post the questions and the answers to the ones that we don't get to on lakesidefuture.com. So if we don't get to this evening, it's because of volume, and we will make sure to answer those on the website as well. Here's the program for this evening. We're going to start with the findings from a survey of folks who have some concerns about the space or who responded to ads about the survey. And then Peter Paw, president of Slokker Homes, and Brian Horton, principal of O2 Planning, will give us some thought starters to consider as the community evaluates the best use for this land. And then we're going to take questions. So we'll start off with members of the press, and then we've got some folks from the Lakeside Greens Golf Course Preservation Society who've done a great job surfacing their issues and concerns, and they've generously joined us this evening. We're also going to take as many questions as practically possible, as we said, from anyone online. Just hit the raise your hand icon down at the bottom of your screen. And then here, I'll see if I can hit it and see if you can see it. Hit that screen, the hand, and then we'll know that you want to ask a question. And then Martin, our director, will take all of your questions in order. So please remember to unmute when it's your turn. For those we don't get to this evening, we'll take any additional questions on lakeside.com, or you can post the answers or your questions in the Q&A section here as well. So there's a thing that says Q&A if you want to write them in, and little hand, you can raise your hand when we get to the questions. Like last Tuesday, we'll also be recording everything, and we'll be posting this online as well for those in the community who aren't able to join us. And obviously, it goes without saying, but there won't be any tolerance for personal attacks, bullying, or any appropriate behavior. So thanks in advance for bearing with the technology, and we're looking forward to being able to gather together in real life. But in the meantime, this is how we're going to do things. So thanks again for joining us. And I'm going to jump right into the survey. We wanted to make sure that we took some effort to hear from concerned residents, and a survey was a great way to do this because it helped us organize all of what we heard. So what we'll talk about quickly is about the survey, the demographics of the folks that answered the surveys, and why did you move to Chestermere, public area usage, what does living here mean to you, what about supporting local businesses, and what are your priorities for Chestermere? The survey was a quantitative survey, so numbers and stats. It was in field from December 10th to February 9th, 2021. 374 folks completed the survey, and those folks came from mostly from lakesidefuture.com, folks who had opted in and expressed some concerns about the proposals, and then also some folks who saw the Chestermere Anchor ads and the Facebook ads. So, and it's important to note there that this isn't a poll, so we can't say that these findings apply to all of Chestermere. It was just the folks who chose to complete the survey. And so just keep that in mind as we go through this. Still good insights and still very useful information, but it doesn't necessarily apply to all of Chestermere. In terms of demographics, only respondents who said they had sufficient knowledge of Chestermere to have an informed opinion were allowed in the study. So if you don't know Chestermere, you weren't allowed into the study. So 100% of the folks said, yeah, I know enough. And anybody that said no, they weren't allowed into the study. 92% of the respondents were from Chestermere. 37% of the respondents had an annual income over 150, and 2.5% of Canadians would say the same thing. 82% of the respondents have lived in Chestermere for 4 to 30 years. Gen X was the largest group of respondents, and a roughly even number of millennials, pre-retirement boomers, and folks at retirement age. The genders were evenly distributed between male and female. Majority of the respondents were employed full-time, and 22% were retired. The majority of the respondents had post-secondary education from college or university. 88% were either married or living common law. 79% had kids, and of those, 48% had kids living at home, and 14% had no kids. 57% of the respondents had pets, and of those, 41% had pets that need outdoor space. 39% didn't have any pets. So that just gives you a good look at the folks that were in the survey. And then we asked what life events originally got you thinking in the first place about moving to Chestermere. And the number one was more space. So you can see up here, more space was the biggest. The next one was improvement in financial position, work, new children, retirement, and marriage. So any implications for planning around this space need to, first and foremost, respect the importance of folks wanting more space. Big reason why folks moved to Chestermere, and that needs to be honored and respected. Also, we need to understand that for some folks, Chestermere is a reward for success. And that was a really interesting insight for us to see. It's worth noting just demographically that the groups that valued more space, most of all, were folks that are either full-time employed, Gen X, or folks that had children at home. So that gives us a good sense of why folks came here in the first place. And then we asked about public area usage, which they used most and least. And the most frequently used spaces were the lake, obviously, and John Peak. And then the Canal Bike Path, Anniversary Park, and Western Headworks Canal Pathway. The area where Chestermere Boulevard bisects the lake is obviously going to be an important juncture for rec traffic. And access to the lake from Lakeside is going to be an important consideration. So we need to keep that in mind. And then it's obviously clear that bike and walking paths will likely be a big priority. And we certainly will see that in some of the other answers. And then we asked folks just open-ended question, what does Chestermere mean to you? And here's what you said. Number one, 42%, number one, small town feel. By far and above any of the others, that small town feel. Second of all was lakeside golfing. family, friends, and neighbors, spending time on the lake, the perfect distance from Calgary, not too far, not too close, safe and secluded, outdoor sports and recreation, and green space. And these were the things that were top of mind for the folks that answered. Planning implications on this will be maintaining that small town feel of Chestermere, distinct from Calgary, is going to be a very strong priority. Needs to be top importance. Second of all, it's going to be important to help create the connection between family, friends, and neighbors. How do we make sure that that is available to as many folks as possible? Interestingly, the golf club is important to members for recreation, obviously, but it's also a place to create community connection and to develop the next generation. So any planning considerations really need to honor that and make sure that that is respected as well. Fourth of all, the green space and integration with the lake is going to be critical, and pet-friendly spaces also will be important. And demographically, it's worth noting that friends, family, neighbors is mostly important to females and those with children at home, and pet owners were more likely to value green space and walkability pathways. The importance of local business. We wanted to get a sense of this. So 63% said it's very important or important to have all the businesses and services you need right here in Chestermere. And that's a really important finding. And similarly, 82% said they'd like to patronize local businesses as much as possible. So that's really important to, from a planning perspective, to make sure that local business is supported, because it's very important to folks in Chestermere. And that includes the creation of local business-friendly spaces where they can flourish, but also enabling local businesses to be part of any kind of development process itself. And then we gave folks a list of stuff to rank in order of priorities. And this is what they said. Top priority was keep the golf course. Second was lower taxes. Third was more public space. Fourth was more interconnected paths. Then increased variety of services and retail, better protection of the environment, less vehicle traffic, and better access to the lake. The benefits of the golf course, obviously, from planning implications, would have to be diffused across other amenities and for non-member residents. So looking at making more public green space available, more interconnected paths, increased variety of retail, better protection of the environment, access to the lake. Also, any new space would need to include opportunities to create a net positive impact on tax revenue. Now, these were the priorities that we just gave to people to rank themselves, but then we asked them just off the top of your head, what are your own priorities? And top one here was keep the golf course, which is not surprising because most of the folks that answered the survey had expressed some concern, so that totally makes sense. Commercial and industrial growth, slow development, new recreation center, new pool. And so planning implications, obviously any sort of benefits the course would need to be diffused as much as possible across the community. Looking for opportunities for commercial growth should be a priority wherever possible. The pace of development in Chestermere is a concern, not universally, but for a lot of folks. And that's kind of out of our control, all of us. But the pace of development is really something that's top of mind. Amenities that being planned should account for the fact that there is interest in the new rec center and a public pool, not necessarily obviously in this space, but understanding that when those things become a priority for the community and they do come on board, what is this space going to be in relation to those things? And there's some other demographic things worth noting. Males tended to prefer the industrial and commercial growth. Females tended to favor more green space and walkable pathways. Those with 100 to 150K were more likely to want development slowed, and those with children at home were more likely to want commercial and industrial growth and a public pool. So that's the findings that we had. This gives us some really good insight and will be useful information, some of the planning implications, regardless of what happens to this space for folks moving forward in the next few years. Now we're going to have some thought starters on potential vision for Lakeside. Again, this is super early in the process, but I'm going to turn it over to Peter Powell, who is principal of Slokker Homes, and Peter's going to walk you through some thoughts on some thought starters for the vision for this space. And over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Mark. Like Mark mentioned, first of all, I want to apologize for the abruptness of the news last year. When we worked with Lakeside Golf Course to start thinking about the future, we were a bit surprised by the speed of the news that came out. We would have preferred to spend some time pondering the opportunities before we would go out to the public. We do realize and apologize that that gave some unnecessary uncertainty, and there was no intention from us to hide anything. We simply did not have anything. Regardless of that, we are excited about the future of Chestermere, the future of Lakeside community, and we want to just emphasize our openness to discuss the challenges that a golf course has faced and will be facing, the opportunities that are possible in Chestermere, the win-win situation that we hope to achieve with all the citizens of Chestermere, and to basically create a very livable city and a livable, walkable village within the city of Chestermere, which will be a point of enjoyment for all citizens of Chestermere. We also want to acknowledge that we understand the concerns and the deep concerns of immediate neighbors. We have some planning principles that we hope will mitigate most, if not all, of those concerns, mainly by making sure that lots of green space is being kept and that there is a walkable pathway network as well as amenity-rich new neighborhood that will enhance property values. Next slide, please. So what I mentioned, the development office for Chestermere, an opportunity to create a central, economically viable and vibrant town center, will be surrounded by public parks, amenities that are accessible to all residents of Chestermere. Next slide, please. These are the 4 project principles, and after I shortly introduce these, I will hand the baton to Brian Horton, the planner of O2, who has worked tirelessly for us to basically get an integrated concept plan on the table. So our planning principles are based on what we see as a future for Chestermere. It centers around a mixed-use center bordering Chestermere Boulevard. We have this planning principle that we are feathering in the density. In other words, we are starting with low-rise, like freehold townhouse, but mostly single-family homes. Majority of the development is single-family homes that will basically complement the existing single-family homes in the area. The mixed-use center we envision as a shopping street, or what is commonly known as a high street, something similar to what you know as high streets, and they're all different, but you know, bustling centers like, for example, Bridgeland or Kensington, or the high street there in Cochrane, or a high street like in Okotoks. And we want to note that Chestermere, the way Chestermere has grown from the lake outwards, Chestermere truly is a very new city, and consequently has not had the opportunity to build around a high street that would have been created in the early settler days. We think that having a main street would create some opportunities for small shops, for a bakery, for a summer ice cream shop, and what I always say is I love to walk my dog, and you know, on a Sunday morning maybe stop and order coffee and a cinnamon bun, and then finish my walk in a circular fashion, preferably. And so the new proposal will have over 5 kilometers of pathways, most of them in a circular fashion. Those are healthy community amenities, and we dearly treasure these. Same concept applies to the open space and recreation. We're very conscious about long-term economic viability, so we're not proposing anything fancy, but we are proposing sustainable, easy to maintain, creative open spaces like the circular pathway, like say a small pavilion in front of one of the many lakes that we are, ponds, I guess, that we want to keep. The majority of the ponds we want to keep. And then last but not least, and Brian will go into details, we have very much considered the economy and the infrastructure. So we have commissioned a small report to basically verify that there is sufficient water available. The roads are already in place. They are basically surrounding the golf course. And we also have verified sewage capacity. In principle, the sewage capacity is there. However, what we found out that there is actually some pending upgrades that the city needs to pay for if there is no lakeside development. However, if there would be a lakeside development, and we have, of course, to engage with the city and with the citizens of Chestermere to eventually obtain approvals. And it's the right of the City of Chestermere to permit approvals or decline. But those upgrades are required and will eventually be paid by the taxpayers of Chestermere, and development would support the cost of these upgrades that are required. Anyways, without much ado, I want to hand over the baton to Brian Horton, who will go through these principles in further detail.
Thanks, Peter. Mark, if you go to the next slide. So Peter already touched on the importance of a mixed-use center for Chestermere, and what this diagram shows is that there's a real risk that with the development that's happening on the east side of Calgary, particularly the east side, the East Hill Shopping Center, the Belvedere area, with the shops and services there, that there will be a pull out of Chestermere into Calgary, and Chester will miss out in creating new commercial centers. So we believe that there's a tremendous opportunity to create an alternative that's more walkable and compact in Chestermere, that creates a true mixed use center that's focused on a main street. Next slide, please. Again, Peter did a really good job of describing what the character of a main street would be, but this is, in planning terms, it's really what is being a focus on new communities. If you look at places that have been developed over time, the main street is the center of public life. So this is where people can walk to get their daily shops and services, bakery, butcher, barber shop, fishmonger, coffee shop. This is where people will gather. They'll meet their neighbors, and it'll be designed in a way that's really human scale, rather than what we see typically in planning over the last half century, which is a focus on the car. This would be focused on the pedestrian experience, and the quality of life, and a place where retailers are really aiming to set up shop more attractive. We've seen great success in Calgary at Westman Village, Marta Loop, and Garrison Woods, where there's an eclectic mix of retailers in these places that we think could be the new heart of Chestermere. Next slide, please. Creating a healthy communities is very important, and this has never been as important as now during the pandemic. We've seen the way that people are filling public spaces, the pathways, getting out for recreational activities, and really we need to create space for these activities and these people. So and this new development will have a focus on healthy living. It will focus on recreation and walkability and alternative modes of transport than to the car, so people can leave their car and be able to walk and bike to local services. Next slide, please. Just continuing on the theme of bikeability, we see this as a potential to be a bike-oriented development. So meaning that that bikes are a real alternative to cars as the main mode of transportation, but also connecting Chestermere in a way that's missing right now. As you can see, this diagram demonstrates how the golf course cuts off the north and south in terms of the bikeways. This diagram shows the extent of the path network in Chestermere and how there's a gap from the golf course. But really, especially through the power line and other pathways, we believe that people would be able to get around all parts of Chestermere using a new pathway system. And really, because Chestermere isn't that big, you're never that far of a bike ride away, and would be able to access this town center as from anywhere in the city. Next slide, please. As Peter mentioned, our early idea as a principle is that we want to provide as much open space as possible, not only to create the areas for recreational activities, but also to buffer new development from the existing development. So this diagram shows that the dark green would represent approximately 40% of the golf course area that would be retained as publicly accessible open space. And it would be designed in a way with input from the community. And this is something our team, we're O2, we're planners, we're also landscape architects. We've designed a lot of green spaces, parks, public spaces, and we always do it starting by talking to the public and the future users of these spaces about what kind of spaces they envision. So we have some early ideas of what these spaces could be, but really the design would be driven by what people think should be in these spaces in terms of recreation and amenities, and also with a focus to create really significant buffers between the existing homes and new development. We also, there's quite a bit of water and water features on the site that we believe can be integrated in stormwater management. And then there will also be a real focus on sustainability and the use of native plants and species, really to make sure that this is climate appropriate and we're being as sustainable and creating a long-lasting native plant environment as possible. Next slide, please. So again, we believe that this could offer some tremendous recreational opportunities. We realize that the golf course is one recreational opportunity for Chestermere. It's for the people who pay to play there, but we believe that by opening it up and having publicly accessible open space, we could have 24/7, 365 days a year recreation space in these areas. So as we design and as we discuss with the public what they'd like to see, we have some ideas for, it could be, more formal sports courts and fields, play structures, skating rinks in the winter. We really would like this to be a year-round recreational destination. So potential for ski trails, mountain bike trails for the summer and the winter, and then also maybe some more structured facilities such as community pavilions, market structures. You could have farmers markets there, and then there could be an opportunity to also re-envision what the rec center is next door, and especially with an eye to connecting this park space to the lake and that fantastic amenity. Next slide, please. Peter briefly touched on the study that was completed for our team in this very early pre-planning stage, and the engineers have done a very high-level assessment, but have determined that quite a bit of the infrastructure that is already there can be reused And that's a real benefit of the location being in the center of Chestermere versus new developments, which are on the fringe, which with new services have to be put in effectively brand new. So there is an opportunity here to lower the average cost per household, providing an opportunity to lower property tax rates for everybody in Chestermere. And that's done by using existing infrastructure. It also, we do know that there'll be some upgrades to the existing sewer system, which is nearing capacity. So providing some benefit to provide some upgrades that would benefit all of Chestermere, as well as there's a gap in the stormwater drainage system that could be filled by redeveloping. And so, discussions with the engineers is that this is a real opportunity to address some of the shortcomings in the stormwater system in Chestermere, and that also could address some of the issues around with flooding that was witnessed in 2013 and 2015. Next slide, please. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about the NMT report, and I'll just briefly touch on some of the high-level findings. Lakeside Greens has been operating at a financial loss since 2016. This is not expected to change given the macro golf environment. Lakeside would require an average revenue increase of 32.5% over the next 5 years to cover capital costs, operating costs, and long-term debt servicing. And currently, the golf course pays approximately $166,000 in municipal tax per year, and a very conservative view of the proposed concept would demonstrates that the tax revenue would be somewhere around $3.9 million. Next slide, please. We'd also just like to address some of the concerns about the loss of property values, and there is literature that demonstrates that home prices or values for homes that back right onto the golf course benefit the most. But there is also literature that demonstrates that actually it's park space and publicly accessible open space has a wider reach in terms of increasing property value. So the homes that aren't necessarily backing onto the private space, but people who live in close proximity, that adds a lot of value to home values, as well as walkability. As you may be aware, when you look on realtor listings, there's a walk score. This is something that that buyers are looking for more and more in terms of how walkable the community is, and that's why this walk score was built. And walkability also adds value, and there's literature that demonstrates that this has been proven. Next slide, please. So in summary, we're in the very early stages of the planning process. We've had a few very introductory meetings with the city planners. The ideas that we've shown you today are very very high level, and they're ones that we wanted to introduce today as planning principles, and we'll be discussing with both the community and the planners of the City of Chestermere and the administration over the coming months, and it'll be a long process of application, and we're very familiar with working with communities and administration on achieving outcomes, and we're hoping that through working with both the community and the city, we can achieve a really great outcome. So thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Now it is time to take some questions. So just for context, folks, we've got 131 participants online, which is great. And we've got 38 questions in the Q&A. But before we open it up to the floor, we've got some folks that will ask some questions before that. So Emily, I should put my screen on here so you can see who I'm talking to. Emily Rogers from the Chestermere Anchor is going to start off the questioning. And if I could just ask all the folks asking questions, obviously state your name, but just who you're directing the question to so that we can make sure to put them up on screen. So Emily Rogers from the Chestermere Anchor is up first.
Hi there. My question is just about the MNP report. And when people, well, if Slokker is willing to share the full report and where people can find it.
I guess I will take that answer. So an executive summary of the MMP report will be posted on the lakesidefuture.com website. We have had some requests from individuals that were super interested to go through the entire report. We're more than happy to go through the entire report. We ask though to basically have them review it and then walk through it with us. There's a reason for that. It's very easy to misinterpret and or cherry pick certain elements of the report. Again, I want to remind everyone that the conclusions of the report are very simple. Lakeside Golf Course has a revenue shortfall of 32%, revenue shortfall of 32% just to cover the bare cost. And that's a huge shortfall. And in the current and future macro climate of golf, and especially the golf course itself, that is not an outstanding golf course compared to golf courses that are in the neighboring area. And so there's very little pricing power and very little opportunity to increase revenues, as has been shown over the last 5 years, which have accumulated in losses every time.
Do you know
Thanks,
when it
Peter.
will be?
By all means, ask your follow-up question.
Do you know when it will be available on the website for people to view?
Oh, I have to defer that to answer specifically, but I would say in the next few days. It comes with all the answers on the question and answers, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Next up, Darby King-Malott is going to have a couple questions. Darby, if you could just let us know who you'd like to answer your questions.
Hi, this is for Peter. My question's for Peter. Your survey respondents stated that their #1 priority is to keep the golf course. Our petition has 3,200 plus supporters and counting who are committed to preserving our golf course. What makes you so determined to proceed with this project? Why not list the course for sale on the open market?
Thank you, Darby, for your questions. #1, the golf course viability is very challenged. We understand the grief of the golf community in Chestermere, albeit it's a very small golf community and the attendance of the golf course has been going down steadily. For example, it currently has 146 members and it used to have more than 196 members a number of years ago. So the viability is under threat. We understand that, there is a shock. We understand the willingness of 3,200 people to sign a petition. Mind you, the petition was open question and open to anyone to sign on to. And so from social media, we already see that, the petitioners come from far and wide and totally not appreciating the challenges that the golf course has revenue-wise. Regarding the open market, the golf course basically was available for years and years. There has never ever been a written offer brought forward to the golf course owners. We are aware of some verbal interactions. just before we started to talk seriously. The fact of the matter is, without a benefactor, someone who is going to subsidize the golf course every year to a large amount of money, the golf course cannot run on its own. The maintenance
So
deficit.
why not put it
$3
on?
million. Huh?
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. So
That's
why
fine.
not put it on the open market and see?
So our answer is very short. That ship has sailed. The golf course is not financially viable, and we partnered with the golf course to see if there is a better way to create value.
Okay, let's turn it over to Brent Lads, who's also with the Preservation Society. Brent, thanks for joining us as well. If you could just let us know who you'd like to direct your question to, and then over to you.
Thanks, Mark. I probably direct it to Peter as well. Peter, in our travels in the community and that, and talking with people, probably the two questions we hear the most, and Darby touched on one just a while ago, was why wasn't the golf course offered for sale as a golf course? And I know you addressed the issue of viability in that, but that may be in the eyes of the beholder, and there may be other people out there who said, who might say, given the fact that it's now for sale, I'd like to acquire it, and I think I can make a go of it. And that's like a lot of businesses that go up for sale. So that's a question and a potential route to be considered. The other question I had, and I think Brian alluded to the fact that there's been discussion with engineers already with respect to the drainage systems and so on, but and he also touched on services. So from Slokker's point of view, what are the economic benefits of building on this piece of property versus acquiring a piece of vacant property on the outside of the community and doing like Chelsea and Dawson are doing, where there is no community concern?
Thank you, Brent, for your question. Regarding another buyer for the golf course to make a go of it, I want to point out a couple of facts in the golf industry based on the principle that the golf course is short 32% of revenue. Now, in this industry, there's a couple of great examples close by. For example, if you take the golf courses that the City of Calgary owns and need a subsidy every year. If you take Boulder Creek golf course that just went bankrupt last year and was picked up for very little and will be challenged to operate. Take the golf course in the northwest of Calgary, that Bearspaw golf course that has actually found benefactors in a number of their own members that basically had to refinance the entire golf course after it went under as a result of upgrading the clubhouse. Now, no one will invest money in upgrades if there is no return on investment. The return on investment needs to be 30% more revenue. It is not attainable. So it's a very straightforward answer. The golf course as it is not viable, and the industry at large is not growing, it's declining, and it will have winners and losers. The losers seem to be local golf courses that are not overly attractive to, say, elite high net worth members that are basically going to the spectacular outlying private clubs by invitation only. And then the other ones that seem to be not really profitable but getting by are the resort style golf courses. The ones that are losing money are the city-owned golf courses, the small local golf courses, the poorly planned and poorly laid out golf courses. So this is one. So that is my answer on your first question, make a go of it. The second question regarding infrastructure. So what we have done, we have identified infrastructure, roads, sewage, water, and storm water. All services are immediately accessible, will actually lower the average cost for every Chestermere citizen because all the main infrastructure is already there. It was basically built around the golf course because you could not go through the golf course. Now, what we also know is there is a couple of bottlenecks in Chestermere that Chestermere eventually has to solve. One of the bottlenecks is the existing storm drainage that goes through the golf course, but is not ready to have a 1 in 100-year flood. And it actually resulted in some local flooding in the rains of 2013. Improvements are relatively easy to do in the case of a local development and will improve stormwater management for the entire, well, not entire Chestermere, but basically Chestermere North. Sewage, same story. There is a bottleneck in Lakeside Boulevard. That bottleneck the city needs to address sooner or later, as it is just overcapacity. And a development would actually help that because we will have to work on that, and then it is basically for free for the city of Chestermere instead of putting tax dollars in there. And then last but not least, water. There is plenty water capacity immediately adjacent to the proposed development. So there is various connection points and wouldn't cost the city of Chestermere anything in upgrades of general infrastructure.
Brent,
thank you, Brent. Thanks.
Brent, you've got some follow-ups?
Yeah, I just supplementary to that. I read you touched on the City of Calgary municipal golf courses, and I think I read in the Herald recently that while that issue was on the table and being discussed, and they were contemplating feasibility studies and that, their return last year was somewhere in the area of $400,000, $440,000, and so now that is off the table. I don't know a whole lot about the Bears Paw situation, but from watching news items, you know, as indicated by yourself, it may be have been self-inflicted because of the expansion of their clubhouse. So I guess all I'm saying in a roundabout way is somebody might look at this golf course and setting aside the viability study from MNP, say, I can make that thing happen. And it might be more in line with what the community wants. The second part of the question, and I won't be as familiar with the building industry as you are, is related to the amenities that are there now. You talked about the citizens saving money. How much money does Slokker save percentage-wise in development by having those services there and ready to go? Is it considerable?
To answer your second question first,
Yep.
It's too premature to really have that sort of numbers. To answer your first remark, I want to point out that the city of Calgary a number of years ago decided to reinvest substantial amount of money in the millions of dollars to try and see if the golf courses could run. There's only one profitable golf course in their portfolio of, if I remember correctly, 11. So now you have 11 golf courses that yielded last year, which was a bit of a special year, admittedly, yielded 400,000. So that would be, say, 36,000 or so per golf course. That alone gives a clear indication how rough a shape the golf industry is in.
Well, we may beg to differ on that point. I think that we're going to see a resurgence in the golf industry, and secondly, with the resurgence in the population here in Chestermere, I think it also augurs very well for the golf course. So I'll leave you with those comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Brent. Now we're going to go to Nicole Dunstan, who is also a member of the Preservation Society. And Nicole, just let us know who you'd like to have answer your question.
I think that this assertion seems to come mostly from Peter. So I will direct this question to Peter. A common real estate professional thinking, and we consulted a couple of real estate professionals when we were listing our home last fall, said that the property could be valued at about 10% more than houses that aren't on the golf course. Given that, why do you continue to assert that property values will not be impacted by having a main street in my backyard rather than a golf course?
Nicole, thank you for your question. It's a little bit of, I would say, a yin and yang or an alternate view. We do know that there is a premium on facing green space. There is no doubt about it. We don't dispute it. What we do know is that there is a premium for being able to access public green space and walkable paths. And as an example, we have a couple of your neighbors that are actually bordering the green space and have enjoyed the pathways this winter, which we cleared from the snow. And one fellow said that for the very first time, and obviously he's not a golfer, for the very first time in 25 years, he was able to open the back gate and go for a walk and walk pretty much every day. That is what he mentioned to me over the phone. And so there is an alternate value. That is the point. The alternate value is a main street where you can walk to the bakery or the coffee shop. And again, my favorite example is a cinnamon bun on Sunday morning. Is very valuable to a large demographic, and people love walking around. And especially in this case, where we keep a majority of the ponds, where we create a circular pathway where you can walk around with your dog and go to a publicly accessible playground. And we are truly hoping to work with the community to create some really interesting playgrounds. There is some creative possibilities there that we really like. And if people want to go, for example, if you Google Monstrum playgrounds, and we can do a great contest to select the best playground, and that will add value and a lot.
I have a follow-up to that.
Go ahead.
It's great to hear you finally making comments that there is a premium on houses that back on golf courses that we will be losing. And thank you for that. I think that one of the things that isn't being considered here is the people who are reaching a point in their lives where they want to downsize. My partner and I are at a place in our lives where we are ready to move away from our family home and move into the downtown core, into a condo, and have a very different lifestyle. Our hands are tied, Peter, because we're in a situation now where not only when our house was listed did buyers completely stop coming to see it, but now we could never get an offer on our home. So we are in one of two situations where we could either wait until this development proposal resolves itself and this goes away, or we have 10 to 15 years of development going on around us before we can actually retire. I'm extremely uncomfortable with this prospect, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Thank you for your question, Nicole. It's actually one of the reasons why we identified the main street as a possibility, and for people to basically make a downsize decision. And some people like to downsize in the big city, but other people would like to downsize in Chestermere. And there's actually very limited possibilities to downsize in Chestermere. So the main street in Chestermere with some density in there will create some opportunities to downsize Chestermere. And as a result of that, it will add value and it will add excitement. And I'm pretty comfortable to say that you can sell your house and I think there is good examples that houses are selling.
Okay, thanks, folks. Next up, as we mentioned in the Tuesday meeting, a lot of folks said that they would prefer to speak on camera or audibly to ask their question. And so for the folks that have raised their hands, our director, Martin, is going to just pick the folks in order that they raise their hands. And just for context, we've got 140 people online, and we've got 71 questions in the Q&A, and we've got another half hour or so in the proceedings. So we'll again, whatever we don't get to today, please put it in the Q&A, and we will answer all the questions online directly afterwards. But Martin, if you can throw to some of the folks that have raised their hands, and again, for those folks, please state your name and who you would like to have the answer your questions.
First up, we've got Blair Magwood.
Thanks, Blair. What's your question? And who would you like to have answer? Martin, do you want to, should we try someone else and come back to Blair in a second?
Second up, we've got PJ Almond.
Hi there. My name's Janet Almond, and my husband Perry and I are residents out here on the golf course. Chestermere's population grew by 150% between 2004 and 2014, and the city is estimated to grow by 250% in the next 18 years. Why do you, Peter, keep stating the golf course is not viable? It is definitely viable with an estimated population by 2039 of 50,000 people. Not only that, but 15 minutes. We are only 15 minutes from the city of Calgary's city limits with another 1.5 million people.
Thank you, Janet, for your question. I appreciate that. I want to point out a couple of facts. Number one is in a 20-mile radius, so roughly 30 kilometers, there's 52 golf courses. Over the last 20 years, Calgary has grown from roughly below 1 million people to more than 1.5 million people. And the golf attendance has dropped. So the sad fact is that the golf industry is not thriving. The amount of tee times is dropping steadily. And if you take the amount of tee times per person, it's dropping even faster. And what I pointed out earlier is there is some winners in this industry, which are, you know, again, the elite executive courses where people pay to be a member and play an executive, typically superbly located and superbly laid out golf course. The other golf course that seems to be, you know, keeping at least their tee times somewhat intact are the resort golf courses like Kananaskis and probably the one there in the south. I forgot the name of it. Anyways, those are somewhat okay-ish, we think. We don't really know. The whole industry as a whole is 1% profitable, and again, the really successful ones will take that, and the rest will all lose money. And so growth is not expected. A growth in a local golf course is totally not expected.
I have to disagree with you, but I respect your comments. The only other question that I wanted to bring up is the City of Chestermere has already engaged contractors to complete our stormwater system upgrade by December of 2012. The utility is undertaking 16 stormwater improvement projects to increase the city's resilience to major storm events. This project is being completed as a design build, and there is a strict schedule constraint on the grant funding that is allocated for this project, and it is going to be completed by December 31st, 2021. Why, Peter, are you making it sound like taxpayers will have to pay for this if this development does not go through? Brian is also mentioning stormwater. It is already being addressed by the city, and we do not need or want development money to complete this.
Thank you, Janet, for your question. On a high level, we understand from our engineer that there is a number of bottlenecks that are still in that infrastructure. And so on that basis, we understand that sooner or later that needs to be addressed.
That's not my understanding from the City of Calgary or City of Chestermere, but if that's what you feel, I will respect what you're mentioning. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Barton, who's up next?
Let's go back to Blair and see if Blair is on audio now. I'm going to assume that Blair has stepped away from the computer.
Okay.
So next up we have Greg Foams.
Hi, Greg. Who's your question for?
For Peter. Can you turn off your mic? I asked this question on Tuesday, but it didn't go through. There's already a massive development on the west side, and following that, there will be one on the south side that will more than double our population in the next 10 to 15 years. We drive by it every day, and it's hardly filling up quickly. There's buildings sitting there that have been done for months, and they're empty. We're living in an economy that's been depressed for years. People are leaving Alberta. They're not moving here like they have historically. We already are suffering. Our house prices are suffering. They're going down. They're not going up, not even a normal 5% growth in housing prices. And you want to build more homes to oversaturate an already oversaturated market. You're destroying our home values. You're not listening to your own survey. You're not listening to the residents here. You don't live here. You don't care about us in Chestermere. You bought the golf course to make tens of millions of dollars. Why won't you listen to the residents who care and love this community and leave? You made a bad business decision, admit it. Walk away, do what's right, be good global citizens. Stop. Why won't you stop? There's my question.
Thank you, Greg, for your statement, I guess. We are citizens of Chestermere since 2011, so we have been around a long time. We have been an active investor in 2 projects there. We like Chestermere. Sorry, was I muted? Anyways, thank you, Greg. Greg, thank you for your question. I appreciate it. We are citizens of Chestermere already for 10 years. So we were in Chestermere already since 2011. We are active investors. We like Chestermere. Chestermere is super interesting. We understand Chestermere is growing on the outskirts of Chestermere. Super interesting when you look, for example, at the current advertisement of Anthem. You see that they advertise that they are 25 minutes away from city center, Calgary city center. They advertise that they're 5 minutes away of East Hills Shopping Center. What we propose is something different. We propose basically to work on the city of Chestermere, to be citizens of the city of Chestermere, to make a main street in the city of Chestermere, to offer some alternative housing options in the city of Chestermere. And mind you, the majority of the housing we propose is single family homes. But what our real focus and our real joy is to create a community that's walkable, bikeable. We love the idea of working with the city of Chestermere and see if a bike-oriented development works, and see if we can connect the north and the south of Chestermere with a bike path that can be cleared year-round because it's efficient and easy to do. And we love the idea of having a main street with local retailers, with people that can make a go of it, not some small retailers that are basically suffering in a big parking lot. And we think we can add value, we think we can add enjoyment, and we think we can create an active city village for the city of Chestermere, where people can enjoy some local shopping and some local services.
Great. Martin, could you give us the next person?
Yep. Next up, we have Joseph Bodie.
Joseph, thanks for being here. Who would you like to have answer your question? You know what, Joseph, your computer's a little bit we aren't able to hear you. But you know what? Actually, I can see a couple of questions, Joseph, from you in the Q&A. Are you able? Can you just check your audio? If you can't get your audio, I can see there's a question here from you in the Q&A. Yeah, sorry, Joseph. Your audio isn't coming through. So I'll, if you don't mind, one of the questions from Joseph here is, Chestermere being a bedroom community, Calgary, will the garages be 2-car garages? I guess that's probably for Peter.
Sorry, Mark, what was the question?
Will the Chestermere being a bedroom community, Calgary, will garages be 2-car garages?
Oh, gee. I have no answer on detailed questions like the exact housing mix, other than that, again, the majority of the houses will be single family houses. We want to feather in the community. In other words, we want to create generous setbacks from the existing housing. We are proposing a roughly between 8 and 10 meter setback, and public pathways that are in that setback so that everyone can access it from their backyards. That is pretty much the vision that we have, and so we have no detailed work done beyond that.
Okay, thank you. And sorry about your audio there, Joseph, but hopefully that answers one of your questions. Martin, who's up next?
Next up, we have Andrew Stone.
Andrew, thanks for calling. Who would you like to have answer your question? Brian, Peter, take your pick.
I guess it would be Peter, I'll leave it open to the forum. I've truly recognized that you focused much on your own interior design, but again, to respect to all the residents, including myself, is that the concerns are to the outside impacts, both infrastructure, community, schooling, access to the beaches. Again, and there's a major influx. You're having, what I'm hearing, estimated 1,200 units with an estimated light average about 3,600 people in a dense area where the infrastructure, roads, and so on cannot manage it, but yet we as the taxpayers are going to be paying the difference once that is built. So I haven't seen or heard what you plan to do to help remedy the impact to all the outside residents. Is there any plans that I'm not aware of?
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for your question. Infrastructure is always a concern. Again, we hope to get some of the infrastructure done by making sure that this community is a walkable community, a bikeable community. Secondly, what we have on a high level, because we know it's a concern, is an alternate access point to Lakeside Boulevard that would make basically the access to the recreation center as well as the beach basically an access only for those two facilities, and that would alleviate any cut-through traffic as it currently is. Chestermere Boulevard itself has ample capacity as far as we know, and most of the traffic will be directed to Chestermere Boulevard.
Can I continue?
Yeah, one
Yeah,
more
by all
question,
means,
Andrew.
by
If you,
Again, thank you very much for answering that, Peter. But again, I've been over 25 years of experience working in the GTA in Toronto, very familiar with infrastructure, roads, and impacts into residential areas. And again, with all due respect, I beg to differ the opinion on the impacts. I truly, truly emphasize that the roadways in future, which is not being looked at, will be severely impacted. And again, taxpayers paying to do it. The access to the beach, again, an influx of, again, I'm being reasonable, I think of an influx of about 3,600 residents in a compact area in a high density. Being put into the beach is not going to be, it already has an issue. So that's going to be making the original residents, again, we won't be able to have access to it. The bike passage you have in your area, well, we already have the roads and we already have other methods to get around. Again, this is a great design for you internally, but for us on the outside, it's not there. The community center, the schools, the impact on the schools, already at capacity. So we are looking at a very big impact for traffic going to the schools, which is already a nightmare. This will, again, substantially increase congestion. We don't have a main artery road, so there's no relief of burden. We can't afford to have any traffic lights put up because the road speeds are 30 kilometers an hour in some areas. We already have, again, other issues infecting that. So again, I am not seeing what you're doing to remedy the impact to all of us on the outside, which we will have to endure once you leave. So I'm really asking and looking for is what kind of remedies are going to be presented?
Yeah, the short answer on that is again a separate access to the recreation center and the beach, using existing infrastructure. And again, Chestermere Boulevard has ample capacity. We're using the same traffic lights as already there. And by and large, we will basically fill in as a development, and the main street, for example, should attract people from local, and that would greatly enhance the livability of Chestermere.
great questions. Great questions. Martin, who's up next?
Up next, we have Charlene Pearson.
Hi, Charlene. Thanks for being here. Do you want the folks from O2 to answer the questions from a planning perspective, or Peter?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I had 7 questions and I submitted them before this meeting. So I was hoping that I had a whole backstory and stuff too, but whatever. So
pick your favorite question and we'll answer it.
And I don't know if some of the answers are actually whatever. Okay, fine. So my first 2 questions are about the winter pathways. And by chance, do you have staff to go around and pick up the poop and litter? Did you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were. Are you talking about the current pathways that we cleaned for this winter?
Yes. Is it you guys that maintain those, or is it actually the golf course still?
We work together. So number one, it would be great if every dog owner took their personal responsibility.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I will gladly ask to have a good look at the current situation. I must admit I have not been there in the last 2 weeks. So
Yeah, on our back
Leave
fence,
that
we
with me,
actually.
please. We
Cool.
look at it.
So, okay, so we have like, we put poop bags on our back gate just to help people, hopefully, if they forgot their bag or something, we have poop bags out there. So hopefully people can take a poop bag on the 12th hole and pick up their dog crap, please.
You know, thank you very much for that feedback, and that reminds us about our responsibility to keep things clean and well. We are super happy how this winter has shown that public access to pathways is greatly appreciated by the neighbors. And again, I want to repeat the story of the old gentleman that was just loving it this winter to walk around. And I want to remind everyone that inside the subdivisions, which are all cul-de-sacs, there's no pathways. So enjoying public pathways and enjoying the outdoors, especially
Well,
in
sorry,
this time.
no, we did,
great.
sorry to interrupt you, but we do have pathways in Chestermere, but it's just, we've used them because they've started to clear them off on the golf course. And I do not appreciate people in my backyard. But anyways, my second question, I guess, is to you, is other than the amazing people clearing the pathways, by chance, do you have people to monitor the special people who ignore the signage and let their dogs off leash? Because it's pretty bad.
Well, it's another thing that, you know, in the last 20 years has greatly changed. You know, a lot of people, either senior, single, families, there is a lot more dogs. There is almost more dogs than children, as far as I remember. It was a statistic I saw somewhere. Don't quote me on that. And so dogs and dog parks and off-leash parks have become a crucial element in new neighborhoods. And some old neighborhoods need
I'm
some
sorry to interrupt you
redesign to do
again,
that.
but
And
we
so-
do have an off-leash dog park behind Safeway, and people should go there if they want to take their dogs off leash, because they're pooping wherever on the golf course now, and it's not great, right? Like, it's just, it's not great to see. And I don't feel it's my responsibility to give these people trouble, right? So if you can have somebody out there to monitor, other than the amazing staff that are clearing the pathways, that would be so great.
Seems like it's a setup.
David?
Charlene, we've got a bunch of folks still in the queue with their questions. So is it okay if we answer the rest of your questions through the chat or the online version? Did we lose her? Yeah. Anyway, so Charlene, all 7 of your questions.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Promise.
Yeah, please let other people.
Okay.
Ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Martin, who do you got next?
Up next is Lionel Blaine.
Hey, Lionel, thanks for calling. Who would you like to answer your question? I think you might be muted, Lionel. Lionel, it looks like you're still muted.
Hey,
There you go.
am I there now?
You're there.
Peter, you know, I do have a couple of questions, and yes, sorry for the last woman that talked about walking her dog on the paths. You know, it is what it is, and you can't do anything about that. You can't. My questions is, what you're doing is taking the essence of Chestermere, and it was built around the golf course, and now you want to destroy our society, or the people that we have here, by saying, okay, well, we're going to throw in this and this and this. Yes, is everything down 32%? Since 2008, and when the oil industry went down, you could take NMP and say, hey, any golf course in Alberta is going to be down 32%. I have golfed at Airdrie, Okotoks, High River, Trochu, and they have no problem in maintaining their golf courses. Why you say it is what would you put it? Not viable. Is it not viable because you're not going to make enough money at it? I'm not done yet. So it's just a question. This is part of our community. I moved here in 1997. No, 1990, sorry, when I first came to this community, and there were 2,000 people. This golf course was the center of it. And now you and your company want to say, no, we don't need this golf course anymore. And we're not going to be anything. I don't know, please. Could you explain why you want to destroy we don't have a lot here. That's all we have. So, and you want to take it and put it somewhere else.
Thank you, Lionel, and I appreciate your concern, and we understand it is shocking. Look, it's a private business, and a private business on private land, and it's a business that you need to run. Like, you know, a mechanic needs to make money at his mechanic shop, and the challenge is that competition, as well as just declining usership, has made this business not a viable business, not in the short term, not in the long term. The decline in revenue, or basically the revenue, is stagnant. The challenge is the costs are increasing. And you know, a couple of years ago, for example, the minimum wage went up. And in a golf course, it has a significant, small but significant impact, just because of so many people working there. And when you add it up, it's a death by 1,000 cuts. And again, there is some winners, there is some losers. And on a certain moment, it's time to look and say, can we do something that is more valuable for everyone involved, every citizen in Chestermere, and I would say on average, there is some people impacted and some people will benefit immediately. And so it's like the old mechanic shop that you need to renovate and becomes, you know, a fantastic ice cream outlet and coffee shop next door. And there is some fine examples of renovations that change the neighborhood into a neighborhood that is ready for the future. And in this particular case, we understand the shock of losing the golf course and the grief that comes with it. But on the other hand, we think that there is a win-win possible, where the new amenities will make Chestermere a better city, a city with a city village center, and a center that actually attracts local residents to patronize local businesses and enjoy that. And for the city overall, the difference is pretty straightforward. There is at the moment the property tax is 166,000. A well-designed, enjoyable, walkable, usable city center will probably end up with 4 million in property taxes. That will actually be above and beyond the average in property taxes per acre for the remainder of Chestermere, and thus it will positively contribute to Chestermere instead of being a hole in the middle of Chestermere. It is different, and we understand the challenge.
Thanks, Lionel. It looks like we've got one more person with their hand raised on the floor. So Martin, can you throw over to that person?
Yep. Up next is Bruce Marshall.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for being patient. And Bruce is going to be the last one from the floor. I think he is the last one as well. So, Bruce, who would you like to have answer your question? You're still. It looks like you're still muted, Bruce.
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
You're good.
Okay, one of the problems, and they tell me that the golf course is not economical. One of the problems, and I'll go back 30 years ago, And I was one of the people who promoted that the McBean group take over running the golf course because they were professionals and they knew what they were doing. However, they were not marketers. This is one of the problems with the golf industry. For instance, Lakeside Greens have a number of green fee players. They come out, the golf course gets their names, they get their addresses, they get their emails, but they have not made up any list so that when they do have a promotion that they can tell these people, let's say, fine, Mondays, it's 2 for 1. People don't know this. The biggest problem with most golf courses is they are run by golfers and they do not have any marketing program. From the information I have, is Lakeside Greens this past year has had more players than they have had in previous years. Maybe it's because of the pandemic, but why do they not get in to do more proper marketing? My question is to Peter. You just want to take this place over, close it down. You don't even want to look at how to build it up.
Thank you, Bruce. Bruce, it's challenging. Number one, I am not a golf course operator. I'm a real estate developer. I was asked to look at alternate uses for the golf course. What I can confirm, last year there were more tee times sold, but sadly in the same fell swoop, there was less corporate tournaments, there was less pro shop sales, and there was virtually no income in the restaurant. So overall, the actual revenue earned, apart from any COVID support, was just down. The challenge is an industry-wide challenge, and on average, the tee times across the industry are going down, and there is not a single operator, as far as I'm aware, that based on pure marketing can improve that. So I leave it at that. I'm not a specialized operator. The only thing I can quote again is the MMP report that quotes a 32% revenue shortfall. That just is very much impossible to bridge.
So it looks like we've got 2 more folks that have raised their hands. Now we're up against our time, and I want to honor our time commitment. So what I suggest is if you have any further questions, pop them into the Q&A, and we'll make sure that those get answered online. Just so everybody knows, there's I can't see the number, but it says 99 plus. So there's over 100 questions in there, and so thank you for sending those in there. And so what I'll suggest is let's just take one more person with the hand raised, and then we will wrap it for the evening. And again, hit lakesidefuture.com for the updates and answers to your questions. And again, as we mentioned, we're going to be we've recorded these 2 events, and we'll be posting those as well. And then you can look for the MNP stuff as well. So let's go to that one last question, Martin, and then we'll call it a night.
Up next is Will M.
Hi, Will. Thanks for hanging with us.
Hey, good. Well, thank you for taking my questions. As you can probably see, I've posted numerous questions. So exactly what is the envision of the new downtown center? We need more of a Lowe's rather than more of a core, because we have a core. It's kind of out there. The Safeway Plaza, that kind of area. We also have a failing plaza, which has been home to numerous yoga outlets and attempted supermarkets. So I don't understand how this is going to be true. It's been indicated that there's been a negative property value, negative impact to my property value, but how can you prove that that's not true? I mean, we live on the golf course and we have a beautiful view. So I cannot see how I could sell my property looking at somebody's garbage bins. So I'm sorry, that's two questions.
Thanks, Will.
Brian, you want to take one of those?
Why don't I take the first one? Yeah. Why don't I take the first one?
You go for it.
Yeah, I'll take at the end here. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question. I think regarding the first question about why do we need a new town center, and how will retail, when there's scenarios where retail is suffering, why would retail prosper here? There's a shift in the type of retail and services that are being successful. And as we see, the places that you mentioned are built on an older model that are more traditional, car-oriented, large parking lots, and they're really competing against those types of services are now competing against also the internet, online shopping, versus the types of shops and services that come into like a more mixed use downtown compact center are those that people go to for the experience. And it's really about creating the experience. And we see that there has been a lot of success in new places that have focused on human scale retail, walkable environments, places where you can sit on a patio, walk from shop to shop, etc. So really, real estate developers will not build unless they believe that it's going to work. There's a massive investment that it has to be made to build anything new, and it's their risk that is really on the line, and it goes for the development in its entirety. That it would, that this is being done with a lot of financial analysis and a lot of financial risk. And that it would only be happening unless the developer and their investors thought it would be successful.
And last word over to Peter for you.
Again, the property values are interesting and multifaceted, and as I mentioned before, facing green space is typically at a premium, especially if it's a nice green space. There might be some areas around the golf course that actually are not so much desired just because of the poor layout of the golf course and the impact of golf balls and etc. etc. However, what we also know as counteracting values are the publicly accessible green space, publicly accessible walk paths, a walkable main street close by. And so all those factors will weigh in, and every property will have a unique balance of benefits and values and cost. Again, I want to reiterate that the golf course is a privately owned golf course. It's private land, and so we work on that basis. We are very confident that pathways, walkability, keeping the majority of the ponds will create a really interesting alternate value. Thank you, Will.
Awesome. Okay, we need to get going here, folks. So again, thanks to Emily Rogers from the Chestermere Anchor, and Darby King-Malott, Brent Lads, and Nicole Dunstan from the Preservation Society. Thanks to them for their commitment to this. And again, hit lakesidefuture.com for updates to this. And again, thank you so much for sticking with us, folks, and appreciate you being here. Oh, sorry. Hang on a second. Brent, do you have a quick question, Brent?
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment. First of all, thank you for hosting us all tonight. And I want to on behalf of the society, express a big thank you to all the people that have been on the line tonight, submitting questions, supporting our position. You know, as a society, we hope you'll talk to your neighbors and you understand now through these forums that this is a major issue for our community. So, you know, rally around the call to action emails and follow us on our social media sites. So thanks again, Mark.
You bet. You bet. Thanks for being here. And folks, thanks again. Just to let everybody know again, there's over 100 questions in the Q&A, which we'll get through as soon as we possibly can. And have a great evening, and really appreciate your time, folks. Take care.